You're listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.
Welcome to the Mammal Watching podcast with me, John Hall in New York.
And me, Charles Foley in Minneapolis. How are you, John?
Charles, I am good. I'm better to see you. It's been forever since we saw each other. It's been, at least 10 days now since we were in Florida. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes, so we were both in Florida to look for the Alleghenian spotted skunk, as well as some endemic species of mice. And we failed on the skunk front, but I guess that's not too surprising, given that it's a really difficult species to actually find, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think not only are they pretty uncommon over a lot of their range, but they're extremely cryptic. I remember seeing its close relative, the southern, I think it is, that's in Houston, Texas. And we were following a collared animal in the daytime, and we were right on top of it. I mean, literally, it was at our feet, and we didn't see it for 10 minutes because it was moving right under the vegetation. And eventually we got a glimpse of fur. So they're extremely secretive. And yeah, very, very difficult. And I have failed multiple times to see this animal. So this is no surprise.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that the spotted skunks in general are doing quite poorly across the US. In Minnesota, they are now quite rare. They think it's mostly habitat loss and loss of denning sites. But my suspicion is that if they don't have enough cover, they're probably quite susceptible to predation from owls, etc. And there've actually been really few records of the species across Minnesota. So it's an animal that's not doing too well in many places. So anyway, we tried. We spent 4 nights out there looking for that. Failed miserably. But we did see some interesting mice, didn't we?
We did. The target number 2 for me, at least, I know is also one of your targets, was the Florida mouse, something else I've failed to see several times. But thanks to a report that Venkat Sankar put out in Christmas 2024, he discovered there was quite a few in the Ocala forest. So we spent 2 nights there with our thermals, patrolling the patch of forest that Venkat had seen them in, and we got a bunch of beautiful golden mice, which are really, they have to be one of the world's prettiest rodents. They're absolutely gorgeous, and yeah, really quite common there. And they're also nice and obliging. They're arboreal, so like many arboreal rodents, they don't run for cover as soon as they get the hint of a flashlight. They pose on a tree branch, often quite beautifully. So we had really good views at several animals.
We did.
Yeah, they're gorgeous things, aren't they? And eventually, Charles, we got that Florida mouse, and it was you that talked me into it, or talked me off the ledge, because I couldn't believe it was one. But you convinced me. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, it was on the ground, which helped from the start.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting a fairly good look at it, and no doubt a Florida mouse. So that was a new species for both of us. And it's interesting what you say about the arboreal mice, because we found that in many parts of the world, haven't we? That basically the arboreal rodents will quite often just hunker down and sit still once you get them in the torchlight, whereas the ground ones just run away. So we were able to get excellent views of the golden mice, which, yeah, I agree. They are one of the prettiest mice anywhere. So if anyone wants to see golden mice, that is a really good place to go. And yeah, so generally a good trip. We saw at least some of our target species. At one point, got very excited and spent 20 minutes looking at what we thought was an eastern wood rat up in the tree, until finally saw its tail and realized it was just a brown rat. And I don't know what it is about brown rats, but basically they just don't have the same gravitas as a wood rat, do they?
No, and I've wasted so much time looking at them. They've got this habit. I mean, you think they're kind of unattractive, and they all, a brown rat when you see one, but many of them are so kind of pretty and attractive that in a flashlight's beam, they frequently turn into other things until you really have a long look. So no gravitas, but lots of deceptive power.
Indeed, yes. And talking about deceptive power, Google Maps failed us in a fairly major way. I've never had this happen to us. So I know 1 o'clock at night, heading back to the hotel, and I swear we were 1 minute away from arriving at a hotel, and I'm still not exactly sure what happened. But somehow we end up on the Florida Turnpike. And then we both look at our Google Maps and it says your hotel is 1 hour and 20 minutes away. And you think, okay, there's something wrong with the system. So close it down, type it in again. Your hotel is now 1 hour and 18 minutes away. And it turns out that basically, once you're on the Florida Turnpike, there is no place to turn around. Just bizarre.
Florida is bizarre, full stop. Yeah. I mean, to be fair to Google Maps, I think the fault was probably mine in that I was in the middle of what I thought was an entertaining story and took a wrong turn. You took it very well, Charles. If that had been anyone else, I think there'd have been a very frosty silence in that car. But yeah, what happened? Neither of us could believe Google Maps. We were hitting our phones and like reversing the route and trying to see what was going on. And then I think I said to Charles, can you Google what's the longest stretch of highway in the US without an exit? And lo and behold, that's what we were on. Yeah.
The Florida Turnpike. So if you're ever using the Florida Turnpike, keep a very close eye on your gas tank, because if you run low, there is no place to find gas for about an hour.
Yeah, there were no warning signs. You'd think there'd be like a warning sign, nearest gas is not for 50 miles or whatever it was, but there was nothing. They just snuck us onto that road, right. And that was it. Yeah.
Anyway, all in all, though, a good trip and one or two more new species under our belt.
Excellent. Yes, it was fun.
So today we are very happy to welcome Yvonne de Jong and Tom Butynski on the podcast, both of whom are primatologists who have worked in Africa for many years and are currently based out of Kenya. Together, they run the East African Primate Diversity and Conservation Program, which publishes widely not only on primates, but also on antelopes and wild pigs in the region. Tom was also a founding editor of the journal African Primates, as well as senior editor of the Mammals of Africa, which is the main reference guide to mammals of the continent. And listeners may know them from their pocket guide publications on East and Southern African primates, as well as the fabulous Wild Solutions website, which they run, and which contains a wealth of information about primates and other mammals of the region. Yvonne and Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, nice to be here. What an introduction. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, honor.
It's great to meet you. We've corresponded for many years, so it's nice to finally to see you in the flesh, as it were. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's start with the first question. And if you could perhaps tell us how both of you got interested in wildlife. Yvonne, do you want to go first?
Yes. Yeah. I'm Dutch. I grew up in Holland in a small village near Leiden, and I was quite an outdoorsy kid. So luckily, I was only a bike ride away from the farm of my grandparents and aunts and uncles. So I spent a lot of time on the farm, fascinated by everything I saw around me, particularly birds, collecting tadpoles, swimming in the river, all the stuff that kids like. So as a child, I was felt quite connected to the natural world, really. So I am responsible for what humans did to the planet. I gave it already as a child a lot of thought. So when my father worked for an observatory, and he traveled a fair amount to faraway countries like Chile and South Africa, and he came back with the most amazing stories, and particularly his stories about the wildlife of Africa fascinated me a lot. So really, getting into wildlife was a natural process for me, combining my fascination for animals and my responsibility to reduce the human impact. So that was really it.
Right. Tom?
Yeah, I grew up on a dairy farm in Western Massachusetts. And as such, I was always surrounded by nature and by people who appreciated nature. Fishing and hunting were among my main childhood activities. I recall the purchase of a Peterson bird guide that increased my interest in bird watching and in the study of nature.
So you both growing up surrounded by wildlife, fascinated by wildlife and conservation. How did you end up where you are now? What were your career paths? Let's start with Tom.
In 1970, I joined the Peace Corps, where I served for 3.5 years as a wildlife biologist in Botswana's Department of Tourism, Wildlife and National Parks. And while in Botswana, I undertook research on the ecology and behavior of the spring hare a large rodent that lives in semi-arid habitats, particularly common in the Kalahari. And I used those data in my master's thesis and in my PhD dissertation. Once I completed my graduate studies in 1978, I joined Tom Stusaker in the Kibale forests of southwestern Uganda to study primates for 4 years. That was followed by a 1-year postdoc at Rockefeller University in New York, and then by 10 years of research and conservation work with World Wildlife Fund in the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest and in the nearby Mgahinga Gorilla Reserve in southwestern Uganda. Subsequently, I have led research and conservation programs for Zoo Atlanta, Conservation International, the Zoological Society of London, and Lodage Hills Ranch. Most of this work was in Kenya, Tanzania, Saudi Arabia, and on Bioko Island in Equatorial Guinea.
Wow. That is a very, very distinguished CV and career progression. You've been to some incredible places for primates. Were you researching primates in Saudi, or was that something different?
No, I gathered a little bit of information on Hamadryas baboon, which is the only non-human primate in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And Yvonne, what about you?
Yeah, no, I was actually in Holland doing a 4-year course of becoming a lab technician when I realized that being inside a lab all my life wasn't for me. So I'm doing that final year. I was lucky enough that this new exciting course in Holland started called Wildlife Management. So when I got accepted to that course, I loved every bit of that, those 4 years that I had there. Did 3 quite interesting internships, worked in Barcelona Zoo on dolphins, learned a lot there, wouldn't do it again. But was exciting, and had 8 months in Thailand, releasing young gibbons on this island. That was really cool. We studied them there for a while, and then I finalized my studies with looking at the feasibility of reintroducing the lynx in Holland on the Veluwe, the national park there. Did this with a computer simulation model. But after my studies, I actually started traveling quite a bit in Southeast Asia, and meeting all sorts of conservationists, looking at wildlife, going to all sorts of national parks, and realized that I really wanted to do field research. So by that time, my husband and I lived in Malaysia for a year and followed our dream, moving to Kenya, to Africa. And I also signed up for this course, Primate Conservation at Oxford Brookes, which was fantastic. I was able to do this by distance learning, except that I had no power or internet connection. I don't know how I did that, but it was a great experience. And I was mainly interested in the biogeography of pothos monkeys in East Africa, particularly Kenya at the time. And this is how I got to know Tom. And we met at his office in Nairobi, and after a long chat, we realized we had the same research focus. And so he invited me on this expedition to the Nyambane Hills and Meru National Park. We found no pothos monkeys there, but all sorts of other exciting primate species, including the Somali lesigalago. And I guess that was sort of the start of our work together, the Eastern Africa Primate Diversity and Conservation Program. And that is now 25 years ago. So there you are.
Wow, it's also a fascinating journey and quite different to Tom's, but you found each other in Kenya. Yeah, amazing. So how did you get the idea for the Wild Solutions website, and when did you set that up? And please tell us about the website and what it aims to do for mammal watchers who haven't seen it, because I think they really should do if they haven't. Maybe Yvonne, you could take that one.
Yeah. So we developed this website, the wildsolutions.nl website, when we started our research program, really. And the aim in the beginning was just to publish our blogs, our news items, our publications, and supplements to the various publications we were writing. We also posted our photos and so on, but soon we realized, or soon we made this website more into a hub when people started sending us some photos, audio recordings, And that's also when the idea of the digital photo maps was developed. So we posted our own photos and the photos of others on these Google Maps so that you can see exactly, particularly in the areas which are less traveled, which primates are where. And we did this also for the dik-diks and warthogs particularly. So, but yeah, we were overtaken by technology. The photo maps are now outdated, but of course we have now platforms like iNaturalist to post these things, which we use heavily. We also post on difficult to find reports on our website, like for instance a biodiversity survey series of reports done by Peter Howard and his colleagues. And so these were done in the 1990s and difficult to find. So now this series is on our website, and then we have other reports like that on there. But what we also have are the vocal profiles of Africa's galagos, and these the galagos of Africa are best to identify by their vocalizations, their recordings. Now, both Tom and I are a member of the Nocturnal Primate Research Group of Oxford Brookes. And the research group has an enormous database of vocalizations. And so Professor Simon Bearder compiled for each galago specific profiles so that these can be used for the identification of those species. And we jointly decided to post those on our website. Now, like you were saying in your introduction, we produce some pocket guides for East Africa and the Horn of Africa. Southern Africa is our latest. And in those pocket guides, we have a QR code with each galago, and those direct back to the vocal profile so that people can identify them. Now, one of these days, we want to be as cool as the birders and have an app. And maybe even we dream of this, an AI tool to be able to use those in the field a lot better. So if there's somebody out there who has the time and the expertise, then we're here.
As mammal watchers, you're already cooler than the birders already, so you don't need to worry about that, in my view. But
I was hoping you would say that.
Of course, I'm going to say that. Every cheap shot I can take, I take. But it's an absolute goldmine for mammal watchers, your site, and I really will put a link in the notes to it. Mm-hmm. But especially galagos, I've seen grown mammal watchers break down in tears trying to identify galagos on how they look. So anything that helps with that is fantastic. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
No. But no, thank you for saying that. It is difficult, but it's a lot of fun once you get the hang of it. It is, they're such cool animals. So in that respect, you should all use them.
Typically, what I do before I go out in the fields is I download the recordings onto my phone and just study up on them a little bit, so at least I know roughly what I'm listening for. So you guys have access to the Oxford Brookes library of recordings. Is that correct?
Well, in a sense that we can ask Simon if what he has in that database, but he was the one who put these carefully together so that all the vocalizations each animal makes are sort of documented, and we have one call for each on our website. But yes, Simon has the whole database and of course an enormous amount of knowledge besides that database. So
right.
Yeah, we do this together with the group, and all these profiles are a compilation of everybody, all the researchers in this group. So it is a mixture of people who recorded these. But on the website, we do also have a whole list of our own recordings in addition to this. And we ask others to record those as well and put those either we can put them on our website or put them on iNaturalist and use them, because now the good thing is now these recordings can often also be done just on your own phone. Those recordings are better and better. So you don't need to have all your expensive equipment in the field. If you just hear a galago, you can record it with your phone. So that's what we do. And we also on our website have this page where people can contribute their sightings, and this is actually quite a fun tool as well, which created some new partnerships for us. For instance, like Benjamin Kitamya from the Kabobo Biodiversity Conservation Program. he and his colleagues, they reached out with this photo of an Angola colobus, which turned out to be the first photo of a Brigidines Angola colobus in eastern DRC. This is so. This was exciting, and it led to like one and two or two joint publications with these with this team. But also, this monkey was listed as data deficient, and after that, we could list it as endangered on the IUCN Red List. So these are quite useful, partnerships. We did the same in Niger for the Patas monkey there in the Air Mountains and Gadebeji with Algobas and Razak Sabaru. So it is great to have these people reach out to us and send their photos, and that helps. Well, it's interesting, but it also helps properly assessing them for the red list. So that's what we do in various occasions, just as some examples.
So just to stress to mammal watchers that if you do get interesting pictures of primates in East Africa that are either interesting or you want help with, then you should feel free to submit them to Tom and Yvonne.
Yeah, by all means.
Because you don't know what, it may lead to a major discovery. So that's a great thing about mammal watching. Let's move on to taxonomy. Primate taxonomy, particularly in East Africa, seems to be in a constant state of flux. But the pair of you have discovered several new subspecies, things like the Mount Kenya potto, I believe, the Mahale Angola colobus, and the Manyara monkey, which is a subspecies of the blue monkey. Tom was involved in describing and naming the Kipunji as well. And you're working on a new Galago, I understand. Private taxonomy to me seems as much art as science, and I really don't pretend to understand it. So could you explain how you decide when you see something, whether it could be a new species or new subspecies? What's the process you go through? Maybe Tom?
Yes. Often before we go to an area, or probably always before we go to an area, we become familiar with what primates to expect in those sites, and what they look like, what their diagnostic characteristics are, and in the end, we base these new descriptions and these names of what we believe are new subspecies on the fact that they're often extremely isolated geographically, and they have a unique and consistent pelage coloration and pattern. Those are the main sources that we use in order to identify, describe, identify, name new subspecies. Of course, they can be used also for describing new species. Some of the subspecies that we've named, you've given the names of the three that we've dealt with so far, might eventually, with more data, more information, particularly with molecular information and information on the skull morphology, they might be raised to species level. But that's not something that we ourselves are doing, but we are encouraging other people to do that kind of research, molecular research and skull morphometrics research on the species and subspecies that we have identified to date. When we started the East African Primate Diversity Conservation Program, the primate list for Eastern Africa was incomplete, in need of review, and the aim of the program was to maintain a current list of primates of Eastern Africa and to assess their threats and conservation status. So that's what we've been doing for the last 25 or so years. That's been the focus of our activities, and that's led to our finding what we believe are three new subspecies. And in this research, we do thorough reviews of literature, examine many museum specimens, and then go out and cover large areas of Eastern Africa. And we continue to address these knowledge gaps. And interestingly, our field surveys often raise additional questions. I'm going to mention a few examples of where we went out to do research on a specific subject, but in the end, we came home with more questions than we left with. An example of where our research eventually led us to new questions concerning the pato. We were working on a project to better determine the distribution of pato in Eastern Africa. And at the time, we came across a unique-looking pato in the National Museums of Kenya, Nairobi. The specimen was collected in 1938 on Mount Kenya by Colonel Stockley. And this specimen represented a 175-kilometer range extension to the east. And importantly, also that range extension took it across to the eastern side of the Eastern Rift Valley, which is a geographic barrier for several of East Africa's primates. Subsequently, we reviewed the literature, examined more pato specimens at European museums, American museums, and we began field surveys, Yvonne and I, together with a few of my students, to try to relocate the Mount Kenya pato and to gather more information on where other patos in Kenya occurred. We failed to find a living specimen of the Mount Kenya pato. In 2007, we named the Mount Kenya pato Paradipticus ibinus stockley in recognition of the collector of the type specimen. And because it hasn't been seen, not collected nor seen, no valid records for this subspecies since 1938, it's been listed as critically endangered.
Yeah, so while we were conducting all these primate surveys in the region, we noticed that a lot of primate species occur in some sort of a phenotypic climb. So you see them sort of slowly changing from one species into the next, or subspecies, I should say. So this became particularly clear when we were in Meru National Park, for example. The baboons and the gentle monkeys. So the gentle monkeys are sykes and blue monkeys. So when you start off in northwestern Meru National Park, you're looking at fairly decent olive baboons. And over a stretch of about 20 kilometers, you see them gradually changing into yellow baboons. And by the time you reach the Tana River in the south of the park, you're looking at proper yellow baboons. So we were fascinated about that. In Meru National Park, there's a lot of these cool things. So while we were describing these potential baboon climbs in southern Kenya and northern Tanzania, we were impressed by the different looking baboons at Lake Manyara. But not only that, we also noticed that the sykes monkeys there at Matoa Mbu, north Lake Manyara, looked pretty different from the nearest subspecies of sykes monkeys. And when we looked into it a little bit more, we dove into the old literature and looked at a lot of photographs. We noticed that particularly the work of Cynthia Booth in the 1960s was very fascinating, because she also noticed this, obviously, but she also collected quite a lot of specimens, which she did beautifully, and they're now in I think in London and in Nairobi. But she also did a study where a captive study. So she interbred those two, the Stulmani blue monkey and the Zanzibar sykes monkey, which in the end turned out to be a Kolb's monkey. And she noticed that she described those specimens, those hybrids, and she named actually that area. She said, "Okay, Lake Manyara and the Ngorongoro crater is a hybrid swarm." Now we found no evidence of this hybrid swarm in that area when we looked carefully around, because all these individuals looked fairly well. We didn't find a lot of diversity, and also we didn't find back the parent species, subspecies of both these animals. So after some more study, we described this population also as a new subspecies of gentle monkey. We called it Manyara monkey, Cercopithecus mitis manyararensis. That was in 2020. They are geographically isolated and they have a different pelage. They look different. So that led to the description of that population, one that is often photographed by a lot of tourists and is well known. So now this subspecies is listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List.
So you go into an area, you find a monkey, and it looks slightly different, or very different in some cases. And you then publish a paper describing its characteristics, any sort of morphology, etc. How do you decide, that it is genuinely a new subspecies? How do you decide on what to call it? Is there a process? Is there anyone that you have to engage with beyond just the people who are reviewing your paper? How exactly does that process work?
Whenever we find primates that are really isolated, we're particularly interested in taking a close look at what they look like. Yvonne's always taking lots of photos when that's a possibility, and we later compare the photos back on our computer screens and have discussions. And then I have a really good library here, and of course everybody can have a good library these days with what's available on the webs. If it is isolated and if it looks different and if all the individuals in the population look virtually the same, which has been the case with the subspecies that we've been able to name, we hold discussions with colleagues. We get their advice. We often search for more photographs. We search for more information on the distributional limits, the geographic limits of the animal that we're interested in, and
the museum collections.
Museum collections are really important. These days, of course, people are not collecting primates and putting them into museums. So some museums hold fairly large collections of monkeys from some sites. Like the Manyara monkey, there might be, there are probably 14, 15 specimens in the museums, in London Museum, in the Chicago Field Museum, and in Nairobi. And take a close look at those specimens. And then in terms of a name, we try to provide a name that's usually descriptive of the site. Lake Manyara, that Glennon was named Manyararensis. Sometimes a local name is used. I was involved with the naming of the Rungwe-Cebus kipunji in the Uzunga Mountains in southern Tanzania. And there, the local name for that, the tribal name for that monkey was used in the scientific name. In that case, it was a species. In fact, not just a species, but a new genus of monkey. Yeah, so it's quite a long process. We take quite a lot of care to look at the old literature to see that a species that we might be naming or a subspecies that we might be naming hasn't already been named and had been relegated to a synonym. We thought that might be the case for the Manyara monkey particularly, but we found that nobody had given that monkey a name in the old literature. So we feel we're on pretty good ground with all three of the subspecies that we've described and named, and that will be on good ground with this fourth subspecies from DRC that we're now working on. We visited Mahale Mountains National Park 3 times to conduct primate surveys, and during the third visit a few years ago, we also did a program training the Tanapa Rangers there, as well as guides from Greystoke Lodge. Mohali's well known for extensive research on chimpanzees that the Japanese scientists have been undertaking for the last 65 years or so. In addition to chimpanzees, there are 10 species of non-human primate in Mohali. This is a very rugged mountain range. It's covered with forest and woodland. Our third visit was in 2022, and part of our training program with the rangers and guides took us up Mount Kungwe, which is the highest peak in Mohali. Prior to that training exercise, we were very much aware that in 1966, chimpanzee researchers found black and white colobus monkey fur in the feces of a leopard high up in the Mohali on Mount Kungwe. And then once in 1976, and again once in 1979, chimpanzee researchers had brief encounters with these colobus monkeys, and they identified them as Angolensis colobus. But prior to our training exercise in 2022, there had been no records of this colobus for 43 years. So we had it in our heads that as we climbed Mount Kungwe with our guides and rangers, we would all keep a lookout for Angola colobus there and listen for the loud roar calls that we expected this monkey to be making occasionally. And we spent 3 days in the windy, wet cloud forest of Mount Kungwe, placing camera traps, audio moss, scanning for primates during the day, and searching for nocturnal primates. We found Thomas's dwarf galago in the montane forest, high on Mount Kungwe. This turned out to be the first record of this species for Mohali National Parks, and only the second record for Tanzania. But during our 3 full days there, we failed to see or hear colobus monkeys, black and white colobus monkeys, Colobus angolensis. And then on the morning that we began our descent, just as we were starting to leave camp, we heard Angolensis colobus and saw 7 individuals. These were about 300 meters down a valley, and Yvonne scrambled and managed to get some okay photographs, just as clouds were setting in and just as it started to rain. And so that ended up with we ended up with photographs that were good enough to assess the phenotypic characteristics of this Angola colobus. This population is about 330 kilometers by land from the nearest other population of Colobus angolensis, Angola colobus. Therefore, it's extremely isolated. And when you're looking at a population that's that isolated, you begin to suspect that there are some differences between the animals in that population and animals in the nearest several other populations. These colobus have no brow band, they have no pubic patch, and the end of the tail, the distal 10%, is dirty white. These are diagnostic characteristics that differentiate the Angola colobus in the Mohali Mountains from all other subspecies of Angola colobus, of which there are about 6 or so other subspecies. So in 2024, we described the Mohali Angola colobus. That's the vernacular name we gave it. And the scientific name given was Colobus angolensis mohali. We've since assessed this subspecies for the red list, and we were able to upgrade it from data deficient to critically endangered. It appears that it has a range of less than 50 square kilometers. It might be as small as 10 square kilometers, and that there are very unlikely to be more than 400 individuals.
Okay, we've focus a lot on primates, but you also work on other animals, including antelopes. What sort of work are you doing with antelopes, particularly in Kenya?
Yeah, so over the last 3 years, we have been conducting the Horn of Africa Antelope Survey. We do this for ZGAP, the Zoological Society of Conservation and Species and Populations. So in the first year, phase one, we did northeast Kenya, Wajir and Buna, those areas, all along the Ethiopian border. In the second year, we did the rest of North Kenya, east of Lake Turkana, but also Malkomari National Park, Siboloi National Park. Of course, as many know, this whole region is very poorly known, and the taxonomy, distribution, the abundance, the threats, the conservation status of the antelopes, but of all the other taxa in those areas is poorly known because it's so difficult to get in there, and once in a while it can be quite iffy to get in there security-wise. So we try when we go in, we try to improve what we know about the distribution and abundance, but also we assess the risk of antelope species. We aim to contribute with our data to the reassessments of all these species for the red list. And we try to bring attention to the unique biodiversity of northern Kenya, using the antelopes really as a flagship species group. But we collect a lot of data on other taxa as well, including birds, scorpions, you name it. But so far, we found large range extensions on particularly Kirk's dik-dik. And this is interesting because that enlarges their area of sympatry and their overlap with the Gunter's dik-dik all along the Ethiopian border. It's exciting. Also there you see phenotypic lines and again, a lot of more questions when we get out of these areas than when we go in. We do notice that antelope species who are not reliant on drinking water on a daily basis, like the Gerenuk, the lesser kudu, bright gazelle, they continue to be relatively common. They seem to be doing well in some areas, but the species who do need to drink, they really struggle. So of course it can be dry there years on end, and also any water that is in these areas, there's high competition with people with livestock, of course, all understandable. So they struggle, and some of those antelope species only occur now in protected areas, which there are not all that many of in northern Kenya. So I think, well, we concluded so far that all the antelope species are threatened to some extent in northern Kenya. Like I said, livestock, food, water, drought, habitat degradation. Most of northern Kenya is too arid to begin with, and so large-scale agriculture is not a thing in northern Kenya, but the competition, therefore, with people and their livestock is still there. Yeah, but we collect a lot of data on other species group, including ground squirrels, birds, like I said, scorpions, and but of course, as always, also on warthogs. We haven't discussed the warthogs yet. No, particularly the primate. We found quite some interesting primate range extensions or some exciting new subspecies and a species for Kenya, but Tom was going to talk about that.
Right. Just to talk about the dik-diks, you probably read the report that John and I and a couple of other friends, we went to Ethiopia, and
sure did, yeah.
And in that Somali region of Ethiopia, you've got this one patch, well, at least one patch patch that we visited, where you've got all three species of dik-dik from that area. So Gunters, salts, and silver, all right there. In this tiny area, they said, okay, silver dik-dik will start here, and 2 kilometers later, said, and it stops over here. And sometimes we saw all three of them at the same time, and quite how they managed to separate ecologically, I have no idea. But yeah, there's a huge amount that we don't know about those animals.
Yeah, a huge amount, and it only gets more confusing when you start looking at the literature and the museum collection. It's incredible, and we had actually hoped in that northeastern corner of like Malcolmari, that whole area, which hardly anyone goes, that we would find salt dik-dik there, but we didn't yet. So we got to go back. Yeah, it's an exciting area, and you need to spend way more time there, but it's not an easy area to get into.
We have those data from your survey, from your field trip in our database, but of course we're still validating. That's no, that was great. I don't think we have a site where we have more than 2 species of dik-dik.
Yeah, exciting.
But nobody works in the places where dik-diks are probably most interesting and most abundant and most widespread, and that's Somalia and in parts of southeastern Ethiopia. So these really interesting sites just seem too insecure, especially for folks who are Americans. Maybe the Dutch can go in.
Yeah, the Dutch,
but not the Americans.
Yeah, it'd be a bit of a shame to be kidnapped over a dik-dik, but anyway.
No, it's worth it. No, not at all.
I think it would be. It's how I want to go, for sure.
You're on, actually, next time. Yeah.
But the dik-diks are fascinating. There's also probably hidden species or species that have small ranges that have not been visited, where they haven't been collected or photographed. It could be a very nice, and I've said this to many people now, it could be a life's work just trying to sort out the taxonomy of the dik-diks, again, using pelage, coloration and pattern, and the molecular biology, and the skull morphometrics. And there are a lot of dik-dik specimens from a fair number of places in the world's museums. It's a genus that's been relatively heavily collected because they are quite easy to shoot, or they were quite easy to shoot back in the last century. Not so today. Today we have to rely on photographs to supplement what we can glean from the museum specimens.
Yeah, and in these areas, we also always search for warthogs. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, maybe. But the desert warthog, we know so little about. And during these first 2 phases of our antelope surveys, we bumped into a few, not all that many, but at least it helped us to sort out the geographic range of these guys a little bit better. But we found particularly interesting primates in that area.
I'll mention 3 primate findings that we've obtained during these Horn of Africa antelope surveys. The first is the Omo vervet, which we found near a village called Turkana, east of Lake Turkana in Kenya. This subspecies was previously believed to be endemic to Ethiopia, but that's no longer the case with our finding in the region near Lake Turkana, and it's currently listed as data deficient on the red list. This is a very poorly known vervet. Its distribution in Ethiopia, southwest Ethiopia, is also poorly known. Last year, we made a 2-day visit to Malkamari National Park, and as Yvonne said, in the far northeast of Kenya. It's a national park that holds no national park staff, never visited by tourists, and remains biologically almost unknown. It's a region considered to be rather insecure, so we went in and out fairly quickly. We only spent 1 night there, two full days. We encountered at least 4 groups of Hamadryas baboons, and these turn out to be the first records for Hamadryas baboons outside of Ethiopia. And they extend the range of this species about 300 kilometers south of its confirmed range. So we can now say that the Hamadryas baboon is no longer a primate endemic to Ethiopia. Similarly, we found the Ethiopian lesser galago at Garar, just west of Malkamari National Park. And these are the first records of this galago outside of Ethiopia. And at that site, we also found the Somali lesser galago. So these three species, subspecies records have removed three of the endemic species, subspecies of primate from Ethiopia and brought them onto the Kenya primate list. Kenya's primate community is now comprised of 11 genera, 19 species, and 34 taxa. And this total now includes the Omo vervet, Hamadryas baboon, and Ethiopian lesser galago. But unfortunately, it now excludes the southern patas monkey, which we believe is no longer present in Kenya. It's been extirpated. And that species only occurs now, Serengeti, Western Serengeti in Tanzania.
Yeah.
Well, we are now undertaking phase 3 of the Horn of Africa Antelope Survey. And this is being undertaken mostly in the northwest part of Kenya. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be surveying the Loime Hills near the border with Uganda.
Well, you know what? It strikes me that countries take a lot of pride in having endemic species. So having bumped 3 endemic primates off Ethiopia's list, I think you're going to be blacklisted, Tom. So-
Well, and of course, Hamadryas does occur also in other countries.
Yeah.
So it wasn't endemic to Ethiopia. So that's
Oh,
2.
yeah.
So that's less.
Two, just 2, right?
Sorry.
Just 2.
We won't tell anyone what your address is, okay?
Nobody heard this.
So, Yvonne, I know you're working on some other projects at the moment. I'm particularly interested to hear about the work you're doing with the critically endangered southern patas monkeys of Tanzania. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. We have continued to work on patas monkeys, well, the whole genus in Africa. Like I said earlier, the air patas monkey, we've done some work, and of course in Kenya. We're looking into, or we're reviewing their taxonomy right now. And but yeah, the southern patas monkey is an interesting one because it's critically endangered and actually a real serious concern. We predict that this monkey will be the Africa's first or next primate extinction. Well, patas, as you know, they are large primates and they forage mainly on the ground in open acacia woodlands. They have huge home ranges and they are very shy and very fast. So you only normally get it, if you're lucky to be somewhere near them, you only see a glimpse of them. And as a result of that, there are actually not all that many specimens, there are not all that many photographs of the southern patas monkey. And so we're dealing with not a lot of data on the Serengeti or on the southern patas monkey. So for a long time, they were overlooked in the Serengeti ecosystem. And since 2009, we have been working together with the Grumeti Fund on completing a survey now and then just to see how they were doing and what their historic range was. And we learned by then that, they used to occur in the Serengeti ecosystem, but also west of Mount Kilimanjaro. They used to, we think, in low densities in Amboseli National Park, Tsavo West National Park. But we also found out that they're really struggling to hang on there. And so their range declined by 65%, we estimated in 2009. And we then estimated to have 150 to 900 individuals. So in 2016, we assessed them as critically endangered. And then when we redid the survey in 2021, and we normally do this simply by, but talking to a lot of people who are on the ground, rangers, camps, researchers, naturalists, looking at records from others who have been in the area. And we noticed that this monkey had declined then by 85% since the 20th century. So we thought at the time that there might be less than 100 individuals left, and that's a species. So only 100 individuals left for this species. So that was a real rapid decline. And so they are listed now for the third time on the list of the 25 most threatened primates of the world by Rewild, this list. So when we learned that their stronghold, which is now the Western Serengeti, they are now extinct from Kenya as well, only occurring in Western Serengeti. So when we learned that also those areas, there are hardly any seen, we did 2 surveys last year. And we managed to see one group of 14 individuals. And so far, we don't know if there are any other groups out there. So that's a real concern. So they struggle. They need to drink on a daily basis. And they struggle now to find their water, secure water places to go and drink. Often these places are... there's a lot of people around these areas with their cattle and Maasai dogs, so that's a concern. But also the whistling thorn woodlands that they really rely on, they are being destroyed outside the national parks. Their habitat is being destroyed by fire in the national park. So the burning regime, they're burning down big parts of their. That the whistling thorn that they so heavily rely on. So that is right now a real concern. But there's also some good news, because it seems like the authorities are now really serious about taking the conservation action that this monkey requires, and there's no time to lose. So we're quite relieved that there's more attention now for this monkey, and that the authorities are now taking this seriously. So in that respect, there's also some good news.
That is good news. I mean, it's obviously very, very sad what's happening, but I'm glad there's some light, some hope still. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yvonne and Tom, this has been fascinating. Is there anything else that you would like to communicate to our listeners?
Yeah, we want to thank all people, all mammal watchers and naturalists out there for the many fantastic field reports and valuable records that, which are in there. And you, Charles and John, for such a motivating and inspiring platform. And a lot of people, because of it, become explorers and naturalists. So thank you.
Yvonne and Tom, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed listening to the process that you undertake when you discover new species or new subspecies. And I would like to highlight Tom's words where you said that there is a lifetime of work for someone on dik-diks. So if any budding mammalogists are listening to this and you need a direction for your life, dik-diks apparently is the way to go. So you heard it here first. Thank you so much for your time and for everything that you do for the wildlife in that region.
Let me also say, I mean, first of all, I love hearing that mammal watching and the community is helping you, but also thank you both for all the work you're doing that goes beyond almost the science to make mammal watching easy, with all your identification guides and sharing all that information and being so helpful to people like me who take pictures and we don't know what we're looking at. So thank you. And also, I mean, I was going to say something about the lifetime's work as well. I think this is a great idea for someone who wants a real chance of adventure. Admittedly, that lifetime may be a bit shorter than you were planning, given the risk of kidnapping or being taken out if you remove an endemic from a country. But it's still worth the risk, in my view. What a life that could be. Thank you both. It's been really inspiring and really lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Good luck with the bonobos.
Thank you.
And we look forward to that loud call recording of that putative galago.
I'm going to try.
You've been listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.